Well, here we go. Deck 78.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, back on Deck 78 with Stephen Melching, DAREN, DOCHTERMAN, Ashley Edward Miller. And today we're going to spike the ball because we got James MARSTERS from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And man, what a great conversation. I had the chance to meet him a couple of years ago at WhedonCon, and he was lovely. And I have to say, he was really nice to my daughter. So anybody who's nice to my kids, they get extra points. So I remember him being delightful. So I was curious when we sat down with him at a recent, was it GalaxyCon? GalaxyCon.
It was Nightmare Weekend.
Yeah.
Was it GalaxyCon?
It was
a regular GalaxyCon.
Yeah. It was GalaxyCon, Columbus, Ohio. Right. I expected he'd be great. And you know what? He did not disappoint, man. He is full of great anecdotes and great stories and just a terrific guy.
And you know what? The thing about him that really struck me up, just to sort of set the stage for everyone, I remember going into this interview, into this end of the con panel, literally like the last thing of the weekend, convinced that he was probably going to call it off. I think that deep down, we were vaguely hoping that maybe he would because, wow, we were tired. We'd done a lot. And then,
like Caridian, you were tired. I'm tired.
We got onto stage with this cat, and he was great. But it was more than just entertaining and great with the audience and an excellent raconteur.
He loves his fans.
He does. He's also incredibly self-reflective. And he speaks very honestly about some very difficult things. And I really admired the way that he really attacked some of the questions. You know, he gets into things in a way that shows that, you know, there's a human being that's beating under that non-beating vampire heart. And it's probably one of my favorite interviews that we've ever done.
He's self-reflective because you can't see him in a mirror.
It's a reflection in the mirror.
He has a great take on his career and his stardom. And, you know, I have a lot of respect for him, and we really enjoyed sitting down with him and talking. Steve, were you a big Buffy fan?
Honestly, I was late to the Buffy thing. I missed the first few seasons, which everyone says are the best seasons. I think I started around season 4, and I enjoyed it. And I watched the spinoff, Angel. But I someday I need to go back and watch those first few seasons of Buffy.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, and our good friend Dan Weber wrote, of course, Lover's Walk, which so memorably featured James MARSTERS and our good friend Juliet Landau as well. So anyway, we're about to share a really interesting sit-down with James MARSTERS. I'm so glad you could join us here on Deck 78. So without any further ado, after these brief commercial messages, get ready to take a bite out of crime with what? with James.
Gruff the crime dog.
Bite the crime dog.
Interviewing one Gruff the crime dog. Get ready for a great interview with James MARSTERS. We'll see you right after these brief commercial messages.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online. This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video, March 27th.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Hey guys, I can't believe GalaxyCon Columbus is almost over. But this is going to be a great way to almost end it. I'm Mark Altman. As far as shameless plugs go, please, tomorrow on the CW, my new documentary, Best Christmas Movies Ever, at 8 o'clock. So check that out when you're recovering from Columbus. I'm also a showrunner of Pandora, writer-producer on The Librarians, a bunch of other shows, Castle. And of course, I'm with Ashley Edward Miller, who wrote Thor and X-Men First Class, and the showrunner of DOTA Dragon's Blood. But more importantly, he wrote an episode of Andromeda with our next guest, and we are so thrilled. He's one of the nicest people in the business. He's one of the most talented, and we're thrilled. This is the first time we've interviewed him on stage, but a terrific guy, James Marsters. So good to see you.
Hey, beautiful people. Hey, guys, before we kick it off, can I ask a favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, I like to do a little video of anyone that's cosplaying and like any character from any show that I've been in, and I string those together and put it on social media, but I like to give them a big round of applause at the end of it. So that's where you come in, if it's okay. Is it okay? Okay. So when I say action, just raise your arms and scream like the team won the thing. Whatever those people do. Okay.
Wow, it's bright light.
Perfectly done, guys. Thank you. Now you're all on social media. Right on.
I want to start by asking you, there's an expression in the business, acting your way onto a show. And obviously you become this iconic character from 2 shows. We all know what they are. But you really acted your way onto that show in a sense. It didn't start with you being a regular on Buffy. It didn't start with you being a regular on Angel. Yeah. But you made such an impression on those 2 shows that you acted your way on the show and became a series regular. Can you talk about what your expectations were? Was it just, your agent gives you this part, you audition, you go in with no expectations? At what point did you know that this was something special?
It's so weird because in the way I see it is exactly the opposite. I feel like I got away with some bad acting in the beginning. I came from the stage, very proud. I'd done 100 plays. And I came down to Los Angeles going, there are actors doing theater and there are people wanting to be stars and they're down here. And I am going to eat them for lunch because I know how to act, right? And not realizing that the toolkit that I developed for stage doesn't apply to film. It's a completely different process. I didn't know that yet. And so I was really acting a lot, but I got away with it because I was playing a vampire. Had I been playing a human, I don't know, I think I would have been killed off immediately. They'd be like, this guy's acting so hard, Jesus. But because vampires are a little heightened, then I got away with it. But I very quickly kind of realized that I needed to go back to school and learn how to act again. And I went back to the school of Tony Head. And I learned how to act by watching him about what he did, but mostly what he didn't do, which is he was just mumbling. Hello, how are you doing? And I was just like, first time I shot with Tony, I was like, man, would you drink coffee or something? I'm going to eat you for lunch, man. And then I saw the scene, and I didn't want to watch Spike. I was just waiting for them to cut to the person who wasn't lying to me. And I just started to try to experience something for real that the camera could document rather than try to perform something, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I just want to say something about the acting, and I know, what you just said about how you felt about what you were doing. But from my perspective, here's one of the reasons why I thought you were great, and still do. So in 2001, you did an episode of Andromeda that I wrote.
Yeah.
And you played a crazy Nietzschean character named Charlemagne Bolivar. It was over the top. It was fun. And I remember the first day of dailies, I was so excited, and you started speaking.
Yeah.
And there was no British accent. And I'm like, wait a minute, his American accent is
hired
amazing.
a Brit. What happened?
What happened? Where did it go? It was terrific. But I realized, oh my God, you were just that good. It was so beyond the accent that I never in a million years thought.
I go to England and all the women are like, give us your sexy British accent. I'm like, what's wrong with the American one? It's not so hot, really. It's not so nice at all. Sorry, man.
So that's why when you go to England, you always use that accent.
No, I don't. I just...
You talked about, obviously you started and trained as a actor on the stage, and then quickly you had to make the adjustment for film and television. How long did it sort of take you to make that, sort of realizing what the lens did and changing, bringing a sort of different muscle to acting, for visual than as opposed to being on the stage? Because obviously there's an art to knowing where the lens is, what lens the DP is using, how close they are, how the blocking is going to work. So it's very different than the stage. How much of a challenge was that for you initially?
I would like to say that I caught on quickly, but I don't know. I think by probably the middle of season 2, I think I was in 10 episodes in season 2, so half of them. So probably after about 5 episodes, I really started to notice that these young actors that I came in having no respect for were actually much more believable than I was. And I started to recognize the problem. And I'm not sure if I really corrected it until I got on the show as a regular in season 4, in all honesty. That was pretty big, yeah.
You've done a lot of shows, and yet for a time it felt like, being on Buffy was like being in the Beatles. I mean, it was at that time.
Accent included.
And it still is, but a huge...
I have experienced crowds of fans ripping cops off of their horses to get to me. Like, insane. It's like I watch Hard Day's Night and I'm like, that ain't nothing, baby. Like, just, wow. And the thing is like it took there were 500 people working on Buffy, right? And 499 people disappear when they call action. And all of their work accrues to me. And they all disappear. And so I'm getting the credit for a lot of talented people who are building the character of Spike, who are building the stories that he's floating on. And sorry, guys, I get all the love. And, sorry, but, so I kind of take it in stride, and I consider myself to be the ambassador of a really good show that had a lot of good people working on it. Yeah. But it was it's been like the Beatles, yeah.
And when you see, what's obviously happened with so many of the people behind the scenes, they've done okay.
Oh,
David Fury,
yeah.
Marty,
yeah,
everyone.
Yeah, they're all they've all done very well.
You would express some wariness with the character coming back after he made such an incredible impression, with Lover's Walk, and initially because he's the bad of the bad. And once David leaves the show, they want to bring you back, but you're like, okay, how am I going to be this evil character with a chip in my head who's not doing all these terrible things? Yeah. Were you concerned that sort of the magic of Spike would get lost? And at what point did you realize that maybe this was even more liberating as time went on?
So are you talking about when I was in Buffy or when I went over to
When
Angel?
you were in Buffy.
Okay, so when I got the chip and later the soul, would the magic be lost? Oh, man. I don't know, man. That's a really good question. I've never been asked that before. I think, in all honesty, I was just trying to keep up. The truth is like, if you guys read one of the Buffy scripts, you'll have a better time. They're more entertaining than watching the show. I'm not kidding. Like, how many people have actually read a Buffy script? Okay, am I lying? Right? It's better. Yeah. The reason is that the scripts were so good. There was so much gold in that mountain. And on a television schedule, you don't have time to mine it all. And it was like we were at war. The enemy was time. Time always won, and time always took something. And we would finish a scene and go back through the script and be like, "Oh, we missed that. Oh, we missed that joke. Oh, that reaction. We didn't get that." And we're doing our best. And so I'm getting these scripts, and the character of Spike is being just yanked around and changed and re-examined and opened up in different interesting ways. And I'm just like, okay, we're going to try that, just do my best day to day in a kind of a creative hurricane.
Well, you say that, and it strikes me that actors tend to have two different responses to that scenario. Response number one is fight. Response number two is figure out how to make it work. Did you ever have a moment where anxiety made you want to push back and go, I don't know if that's a place Spike would go or should go? Or were you always just game for it? I'm telling people you're going to eat their lunch, and sometimes at craft services.
I had the really good experience of being a producer for small theater in Chicago and Seattle. So I always kind of think of things a little more from that angle. And I'm here to tell you, if you ask an actor what they think should happen to their character, it will always come down to make me look cool. Yeah. Every time, right? Yeah. And that is only so interesting. Yeah. And I was very happy to have better minds than mine make those decisions. In all honesty, on most television shows, once you've done one episode, you kind of know what you're going to be asked to do for the rest of the thing. And that was not true on Buffy. I was always being asked to do very, very different things. And there was the point there was an episode called Seeing Red in a bathroom where I really attacked Buffy in a sexual way. And I don't like to watch those scenes. If there's a movie and I know there's that kind of content, I don't go see that film. If there's an audition and I know that's that kind of content, I don't audition for that. If I run up against it on television, I turn the channel or turn it off. I just don't like it. And I remember going to one of the writers as I was going on set to film that scene, and I was like, you know what? You guys don't realize what you're doing to us. Like, you write this stuff, but I have to live it. And it's hard, In defense, by the way, in defense of that scene, one of the reasons that the writing was so good on Buffy is that the writers were being asked to come up with their worst day, right? The day that they don't talk about, the day that keeps them up at night, their dark secret, and then slap fangs on top of that and tell the whole world. So it was an act of sustained courage and vulnerability from some really good writers. And the idea for that scene came from one of the women on the writers, who in college got broken up with by her boyfriend and went over to his apartment thinking that if they made love one more time, it would all be fixed, and really jumped him physically. And he had to physically remove her and shove her out of his apartment. And that was the pain that brought that scene. Now, they thought that they could switch the sexes on the two characters because Buffy was a superhero and could literally throw Spike through a wall. they thought that it would be okay to flip the sexes on that. My argument to them was, we are providing a vicarious experience for the audience. So what we try to do as storytellers is tempt the audience to climb behind the eyes of the lead. And if we can do that, we can take you guys on the adventure that the lead is going through. So everyone who's watching Buffy is Buffy while we're watching. When I watch Buffy, I'm Buffy when I'm watching it, right? So my argument was, everyone is watching this is Buffy, and they're not superheroes, guys. So I'm doing that to the audience, and it's gonna land very differently depending on their experience. It might really be painful. I don't think this is a good idea, but we did it anyway. And they needed a reason for Spike to do something so horrible that he wanted to get a soul and redeem himself. There were reasons that they did it that I think are defensible. But I sometimes wish that we had found another way to get there, in all honesty. So to answer your question, we opened up a little can of worms.
That's
there,
all right.
But after that scene, I became afraid to read the scripts because I did not know. I realized that I was contracted to do whatever they told me to do, to whoever they told me to do it, to wear or not wear whatever they told me, down to wearing a sock only. And that's a weird day when you go into your trailer and the only thing on your costume rack is one sock. This
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Be a normal day. Yeah. So it got terrifying, In hindsight, I'm glad because I was outside of my comfort zone, and as an artist, I don't think it's not good to be comfortable for very long as an artist. It's probably not good for me to be comfortable in my life for very long. I don't learn anything when I'm comfortable. So it was all good, but it was just scary. Yeah, so.
Well, I got to ask you now. I'm going to ask you a harder question because...
Harder
question. You started... You brought it on
I'm afraid of what question you're going to ask.
You brought it on yourself. You mentioned starting a theater company in Seattle. Now, you took it upon yourself to call it the New Mercury Theater.
Yes.
So, were you saying you were the new Orson Welles?
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty ballsy.
I was very sure of myself.
Okay. Well, there you go. I'm impressed with the audacity of that.
I was just enamored with the Mercury Theater. I'm not sure if I considered. No, I don't think I thought of myself as a new Orson Welles. But I thought that was a tradition I wanted to follow. They were very ballsy, the Mercury Theater. The Mercury Theater are the people that did War of the Worlds, by the way, and War of the Worlds was a radio drama about the world getting taken over by aliens, right? But they didn't tell anybody that it was a fake thing. They put it out there as if it was a real thing happening to the world. And it caused absolute pandemonium in the country. And they were all like, hey, got you, I always wanted to know what it was like for the country to experience that. And then I got a DVD of the original War of the Worlds from the Mercury Theater. And my son was like 10 years old. So I said, I can give this to him. And so I'm horrible. So I went to him and I was like, oh, dude, back in the 30s, this thing happened. And aliens came to Earth, dude. It was pandemonium. People die. It's all okay now. The aliens left and we're safe now. But back then it was balls, man. So check this out. And I just put it on. He was just like, oh my God.
That's the best idea I ever heard.
This is before they put the chip in your head.
He doesn't really trust me.
So when did you get a soul, James?
Yeah, he's just like, you want to go on a ride? Where are we going, man? Where are we going?
Well, it's interesting you were so enamored with War of the Worlds and what the Mercury Theater had done because, of course, you've had a very successful voiceover career as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, obviously, what you're doing with the Dresden Files or what you've done on Dragon Ball. So can you talk about that muscle? That must be very liberating because unlike, you mentioned Buffy, working Saturdays, working these insane hours, not having a hiatus on 26 episode seasons, but on voiceovers, that's a little different.
Yeah, voiceover is much closer to stage. On stage, Your face is about that big, and your eyes are pretty much invisible. So there's not a lot of expression. There's not a lot of information you're going to convey through your physical form. Most of the information that you're giving to the audience is the words and how you're hanging them in the air. And like I said before, I came to Los Angeles and I realized I've got to put that toolbox in the closet. It doesn't work for film. And then I started doing voiceover work, and I realized I get to pull out my toolbox. I spent a lifetime learning those tools. I can't tell you how hard it was to put them away, and I get to pull them back out again. And the difference between telling a story where my face is not there to the guy on stage, it's very different. It's very minuscule difference. So in that way, it was just wonderful. I will say, books on tape is not easy. It's hard. When I'm on stage, there's energy going between the actors, and we're feeding each other energy, and the audience is feeding us energy, and we're feeding energy to the audience. It's all pinging around, so that by the end of a play, I'm more energized after the show than before. Same thing with doing a concert for music. Doing film, the actors are pinging energy, so you often feel quite fine after a 12-hour day. I mean, you're not drained completely often. When I'm doing a book on tape, it is just a microphone and me. And that's like a black hole, man, of energy. And it gives you nothing. And you give it all day long, 8 hours a day. And by the end of that, man, I go home and I'm just like, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So that in that way, it's not as easy at all. But it depends on the project. Yeah, sometimes you go in your pajamas. I'm Zamasu in my pajamas. Yeah.
Well, I think yesterday was the anniversary of Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica. You did a couple episodes of Caprica up in, I think they shot in Vancouver. Can you talk a little bit about doing that show? Obviously, also a show with a huge cult appeal, probably transcends cult appeal, but what that was like for you.
If we only would have had some more robot fights and like high-speed chases, I think we would have gotten another season. I was like, more violence, guys. I know it's a highfalutin show, but you got to punch people. Come on, man.
They said on Succession, honestly.
But yeah, like one of the big things I remember a few things about that. One was usually in film, in television, you're shooting 1 or 2 camera angles, right? So they have 1 or 2 cameras filming the action. And then they have a whole different setup to film a different camera. And the cinematographer is lighting for that perspective. And that's why it's so beautiful. And that's why it takes so long. And if you ask a cinematographer to accommodate 3, 4, or 5 cameras, he'll start shouting at you. Because it's just, how can you light that, right? Caprica shot up to 7 cameras for a take. And it was a beautiful show. Like, that cinematographer was amazing. And what it meant is we could get all the shots in one take. So we could get the master, we could get the 2 shot, we could get all the close-ups all in the same take. And what that meant was the director would say, okay, I want you to do this one all about anger. I don't want anything but anger. Do that. Now do it all with love. And we were just play, and we didn't have to match anything. Mm-hmm. It was so liberating. It was just like being in like a laboratory. It was amazing. And then the second thing I remember about Pat Caprica is they were going to pair me with the 18-year-old character in the next season. And I was just like, I'm a little bit old for that, don't you think? They're like, no, it's going to be awesome. I'm like, okay. I'm like, wow, this is wrong, but okay. I'm playing this dirty old man. Oh my God. Like a religious zealot who's got a bunch of people following him is now going to take up with a teenager. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, yeah, everyone's going to hate me.
Maybe it's good they didn't renew Caprica.
Maybe it's good, yeah. Jumping the shark in the second season, yeah.
And, Runaways was also a show that a lot of people love and could have used another season.
Yeah.
And it must have been interesting because, of course, you came on the scene in the U.S. playing, a character with a bunch of teenagers. Now you're sort of the adult to a bunch of teenagers in Runaways. What was what was your experience like on Runaways? Did you feel good about that ultimately? And
Very good, very good. The really wonderful thing was the very first day of work on Runaways every year was meeting with the lawyer. So we would go to a theater, and the lawyers would be where we are, and we'd all be in the audience. The lawyer would be saying, because it was Me Too, and they would be telling us what you do and what you do not do. And it was wonderful, because there was a lot of young people on the set, and they were all safe. And nobody went crazy. Yeah. It was relaxed. There was not the drama. There was not people freaking out, and you don't know why they're freaking out, because now we know why they were freaking out. And it was just freaking fabulous. The only annoying thing about the young cast, the actual Runaways, if I can tell you, is they were better actors than the adults. That was annoying. Like watching those scenes, be like, damn it, they did it again. Shit. I mean, I'm not even kidding. They really were. I asked fans about this. They're like, yeah, you're right. They were better. Yeah. But yeah, like I used to love doing the press for Runaways, because I'd sit down with the journalists and I'd always say, okay, first of all, my character is the biggest hero on this whole thing. He's the hero of the whole thing. And they're like, you're playing a character who is killing a teenager every year and feeding him to an alien. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about that. Say, okay, so I am playing a character, Victor Stein, who has spent he's a scientist, he spent his whole life trying to crack fusion power, knowing that if he can do that, he's going to save humanity from global warming. We're going to stop burning fossil fuels. We're not going to light things on fire for a fuel source like a caveman anymore. We're going to grow up, and he's going to save us. And he's coming to middle age, and he's failed. And he meets one man who says, look, man, I'm an alien, by the way, and fusion power is easy. Like, you guys are so close. It's just one little thing that you guys need, and then you'll have it. It's like, we can give that to you, no problem. Problem being, it's on the spaceship, and I've got to wait till the spaceship comes back, and I have to eat something, and I happen to eat, well, you guys. So I need a teenager once a year, and if you give me a teenager, I'll help you save your whole species.
Which is a pretty good deal.
Right? Yeah. So I tell the journalists, and the journalists are looking at me like all dubious, and I'm like, okay, dude, if you were given that choice, would you say, let the human race die so that I can go to my grave with a clear conscience? Is that the heroic thing to do? Or is the heroic thing to do, say, okay, I will be the villain, and you can spit on my grave and call me the villain, but you live, and your children will live. Isn't that the hero? And they're like, I never thought of it that way. And they'll be like, but wait a minute, you're hitting your son. I'm like, yeah, well, let's talk about that. I have a 178 IQ. My son has been measured the same. He's got a 178, and he's having C's in high school. At what point do you stop telling a young man he's doing his job, and then you get tough with him? Now, arguably, I'm being a little too tough, but is that worse than just saying, good job? And they're like, wow, I never thought about that like that. And I'm like, just kidding, I'm a douchebag on the show, come on. It was glorious, it was so fun. Yeah.
You got revenge for all those stupid questions you've been asked in your career.
Well, the thing is, I have to convince myself that I am right. Like when you play a villain, you have to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing. And what I found is actually, if I can convince myself that I'm the hero, or if I can convince myself that I'm the victim, then any action is allowable. And what that's taught me is if I ever in life start to feel like I'm either the hero or the victim, I'm like, shut up, stop, don't do anything right now because you're going crazy. You're gonna do something you're gonna regret. Yeah.
It's the old axiom: every villain is the hero of their own story. So, and that is what gives villains such great depth. Because you play them as a mustache twirling villain, it's not.
Sometimes directors will be like, can you give us a little more spice? I'm like, oh, you mean like, shall I do this? That's my way of saying no.
I want to talk about, because I'm sure people want to know when you came back to Angel. I mean, obviously there are all the pluses contractually and money and all that, but how much were you sort of worried because they said, oh, you're going to be at an evil law firm, and of course they made it work and it's brilliant, but on paper it sounds awful.
Because who would believe an evil law firm?
This is your beloved character. You have this great, farewell in Buffy.
Yeah.
How much did you wrestle, or if at all, with the idea of coming back? Plus, also, if the show works, everyone's grateful to you. If it doesn't work, oh well, he killed the show.
Yeah. So when you're a secondary character on a show, like on Buffy, if you're a secondary character on Buffy, most of your lines are, "What do we do now, Buffy? Everyone wait for Buffy. Everyone get behind Buffy. Did we do okay, Buffy?" Right? And I was this character that was like, "Buffy is stupid. We're going to die." I mean, that's just way better, right? And then I fall in love with Buffy, and I'm like, "Oh, Buffy, would you like my coat, Buffy? Have a cup of tea, Buffy. Sit on my lap, Buffy." I'm like, and I'm so close to just being a normal secondary character supporting Buffy, and now I have a soul, and oh my God, playing a hero is so hard. Like God, like when you're a hero, you're always trying to save people, right? So you're always running. So they call action, and you start running. For 12 hours a day, you are running to and fro, sweating and huffing and puffing, and all the other characters like complaining that you're not saving them correctly, and you're always dredging up some childhood trauma so the thing has depth and weight, and it's just a lot of work. Then you play a villain, and you just lurk. And you don't have to care about anybody because you're a selfish prick. And you wait for the hero to come huffing and puffing and trying to save the world. You jump out of the shadows, you pop, and you go home. Easy. So then I get a soul, and now I'm tortured by feelings and all of that. And I'm all supportive of Buffy, which is wonderful, I know, but I miss the old days. And then they say, "Do you want to go over on Angel?" Well, what am I going to do on Angel? Give him a headache. Yes. Like I have a soul. I'm like a soul now, but I still hate Angel. You know? So I get to just ruin his day every day. It's wonderful, yeah.
Well, I know there are going to be a lot of questions, so if people want to line up at the mic, before we go to questions, I want to ask you, you've done so many different genres, you've done theater, you've done film, you've done television. What's your dream project? Is there something on the bucket list that you really want to do that you haven't done yet?
A film version of Macbeth. Yeah, I was in a production at the Altman Theater in Seattle where I played a bunch of little small roles and watched a very, very good actor drown in that role. Macbeth is known as one of the best plays ever written, but if you go see it, it's often horrible. And there are reasons for that. There are basic systemic mistakes that are made, and people don't know that they're making them, that ruin the play. Lady Macbeth is not a bitch. She doesn't castrate Macbeth and force him to kill the king. It's not all her fault, and he's just some victim. They're two criminals, and they're in league together, and sometimes they disagree, and they take after each other hammer and tong. That's it.
Like Spike and Drusilla.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, there's just a lot of ways that you can make the engine of that play sputter. And if you know about them and you don't do that, it'll be great. So I watched a guy make all the mistakes you can make, and then I got Macbeth in a smaller company, the Seattle Shakespeare Company, and I fought from what I'd learned, and I read a really good book called Of Jesuits and Witches, which is a lot about this. And I fought hammer and tong for this, but I got my way, and we got standing ovations, 7 out of 10 performances. We had to extend, it was a big hit, and I was like, okay, the audience is telling me that this is working. And I want to take that and put that on film. And Macbeth is the shortest of all of Shakespeare's plays, so it's going to be, you don't have to cut as much. It is very disjointed by the end. The 5th act on stage is problematic because it jumps around between England and Scotland, and it can be confusing for the audience, but on film, it doesn't matter, it's okay. In fact, the disjointedness starts to pick up the pace, it works very well. There are great ways to put a lot of set pieces of action in amongst and keep everything moving. The witches have to actually be witches. In Shakespeare's time, they believed in witches. There were tens of thousands of people that thought that they were witches. And so the witches have to be real. And so, we get magic? If you make the witches real and you have film, you can have all of this phantasmagoria of magic and horror and all of this wonderful stuff. It's just almost made for film. And I've never thought that I've seen a good Macbeth on film. not the one that's not as good as it can be. So, yeah.
Not a fan of the Polanski version.
That's the best one. That's the best one. But there wasn't enough money to make it fly like I think it can fly. Yeah.
Okay, well, a lot of questions coming up, so let's go to you guys.
And you can adjust the microphone if you just kind of grab the top of it and give it a good squeeze there. Okay.
There we go. Thanks. Do you want a naughty or a nice question?
Hit me, baby.
All right. Given your characters of Spike, Captain John, and Declan Horn.
Who?
Declan
Oh,
Horn.
hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which, in your opinion, has the bigger BDE?
All of them, baby. I played them.
All right. But my nice question is...
You tried.
Yeah, I tried.
Yeah.
Okay. We all know you came down to Los Angeles because you just had a son, and that's why you did Buffy. But why, 4 years earlier, did you try out for Northern Exposure?
That's where I got my union card. And they were paying a lot of money. Yeah, and I also want to try film. So yeah, I was on Northern Exposure twice. Once as a bellhop, and then later, the next season, they put me in as a more major character for an episode, and that's where I started to learn about film. I remember I went on the set, and there was a line producer sitting there, and I was like, "Can I ask you a question?" He's like, "Yeah, what do you want?" I'm like, "What do you do around here?" And he just looked at me like, "You are so almost fired for even asking me that question." And I was like, I mean, besides everything, besides making sure this whole thing doesn't like run off the rails, I produce theater, so I'm just wondering what the difference is between what I do and what you're doing. And he's like, "Oh, well, that's pretty much it. I'm here to make sure everyone doesn't screw this up." And I'm like,
They love stupid questions, line producers, right?
Oh my God.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, man.
Hi. So on Runaways, you obviously played Victor Stein, but eventually you played Jonah. So I was wondering just how that conversation went when you got the script and were like, "Oh, I guess I'm him now." And
I freaked out. Jonah, for those of you who haven't seen Runaways, was an already established character played by a very good actor who was going off to do another TV show. And I'm not a mimic. Like, I can do a lot of different voices and accents and stuff, but I'm really basically trying to do different versions of myself or discover different parts of myself I didn't know was there. And I'm not good at doing someone else. And so I was just, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I went to the actor who was playing Jonah, and I said, "Can you save me, please? Can we just meet for free, and you can just read the lines and do the blocking and walk around, and I will just copy you?" And he's like, Of course. It must be so strange to be stepping into the role." And I was like, "Yeah," and he was just absolutely gracious and generous. He was such a wonderful man. And he gave me a lot of his free time for like 3 episodes of that. I started doing it in the second season. And I think you can see a real difference between the Jonah of the second season and the Jonah of the third season, because he was gone now in the third season, and I had to try to do it without him. And I don't think it's as good. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Something I've always wondered is, since Spike is usually so brave, he's reckless, do we know why he's terrified of bears?
Because he's not an idiot. Also, he's tied up. If he'd have been out, able to defend himself, he might have had fun. You never know. But no, he was helpless, so that was the problem. Also, I was tied up. And it was a trained bear, but everyone else is like able to run, and I'm in that scene. I'm like, if that bear escapes and gets ornery, I'm just here. So I hope everyone knows their lines. So let's get this done. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have heard from other actors doing panels about how difficult it can be coming into a TV show that's been running for a few years, and that you get different types of reception from different casts when you're a guest star, and that's how you started kind of on Buffy before you knew that you were going to keep coming back as Spike. Mm-hmm. What was the reception like initially, and did that change at all as time went on?
That's a really good question. Yeah, and I have come into different shows at different parts of their, the running of the show. And luckily, I really cut my teeth on Buffy. And we were working up to 20 hours a day on Buffy, 5 days a week, 9 months a year for 7 years. And you get so tired. And sometimes you get so tired, it's hard to be welcoming to every single new actor coming to the set. And you're just trying to remember your lines and trying to get the shots. And what I try to remember is I am not on the set trying to make friends with everybody. I'm not going to ask them to make me feel comfortable. I am going to be there. I'm going to know my stuff. I'm going to be able to get printable takes from the first take. I'm not going to be the problem. And they're going to love me because they're not going to have to do any extra. They're all tired. They're all just hanging on by their fingernails, man. And if I can come in and not ask for anything and just give a credible performances right from the top, because I don't have as many scenes as the rest of them have. I don't have the workload that they have. So I'm just going to come in and just make this scene easy to get. And then I always wait for my close-up. This happens every time. I come in and I'm treated, everyone's nice and everything, but after the close-up, everyone's like, hi. Because it's only in the close-up that you know if the actor really knows what they're doing or not. If like, how good are you is how good the close is. And I'm like, can't wait for the close. I can't wait. They're going to come around and say, we're really, really happy you're here. But it's not something, it's just something that kind of happens because you're doing the work, It's not something that you try to achieve outside of, in between takes or whatever. I try to let them rest. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
What is your comfort piece of media? So like book, song, movie that just gives you that nice, like I'm taking a warm bath feeling.
Video games, shooting people in the head.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. It never gets old. It just doesn't ever get old. Yeah, my favorite video game is Wolfenstein 2. It's this game where the Nazis win World War II and they take over the world. And so in Wolfenstein 2, they've taken over America too. And there's this one level where you go down to New Orleans and everyone's running around with sheets over their head. They're all Ku Klux Klan. And you get to shoot them all in the head. Yeah. And if you beat the game, you can go back and replay any level that you want. So I just play that level over and over and over and over again. I just hunt them in different ways. Like, oh, baby, you're just wearing a sheet. You have no body armor. Yeah. Never gets old.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We only have time for one more question. I'm sorry. So.
I just had a question about like accents and stuff. Yeah. Your British accent is so good that the first time I saw just an interview with you, I'm like, wait, he's not British? What was that? So I was just curious like how you taught yourself to develop it so well.
Monty Python helped when I was a kid.
Nice.
Also, when you're doing theater, it's just kind of expected that you do accents. It's not very impressive, actually. Everyone does accents in theater. So coming down to LA and they're like, you do accents? I'm like, yeah. But even that being said, I don't think that my accent in the very beginning of Buffy was really that good. Sometimes directors would ask me, are you Australian or English? I'd be like, oh, no. And there was one episode where I said, they had me say bullocks, which I can't even tell you what that means. But they misspelled it. It was written, the script was written by an American who spelled the word BULL-LOCKS. So I just said bullocks. And the episode came out and Tony Head came to talk to me. And he goes, we don't say it like that, you prat. You're embarrassing me back home at this point, and I'm going to help you. And so Tony tutored me by force for 6 months. He wouldn't even knock. He would just enter my trailer, and we would have lunch together, and we'd go through the script until he was satisfied that I wasn't going to embarrass him anymore. And if it hadn't have been for Tony, and he was nice about it, but he was very firm, I don't think that you would be saying that without Tony's help. Yeah.
Well, aren't you glad you stuck around? How great was this?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, James.
I know you think.
Wow, that was really fun. It's always great to sit down here on Deck 78 and discuss things we can on the other podcasts.
Yeah, well, we could, but people would stop listening.
I know.
That's right. They would say, this is not Star Trek. This is not the 4:30 movie. This is not list of podcasts go here. But
well, now, I don't want to break the illusion, but, we're not really on Deck 78. So if you were, what would you be drinking, Steve?
What would I be drinking? I'd be drinking a pina colada.
And getting caught in the rain?
Getting caught in the rain.
Wow, I wish it would rain. Okay, what about you, Darren? What would you be drinking on Deck 78 if we were actually together on a starship?
I think I'd have a Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster.
Ooh, that sounds good. What about you, Ashley?
You know what? I'm going to go with the blood of my enemies.
The blood of your enemies. Okay, well, that's great. Well, thanks for joining us for another Deck 78.
Wait, what's your drink, Mark?
Yeah, Mark.
Vodka cran?
Sure. I'd like a chocolate milkshake in a silver chalice.
In a silver goblet.
A silver goblet. Okay. So you're listening to Deck 78, Inglorious Treksperts, Trekspert Briefing Room are part of the Treksperts Podcast Network. Copyright 2025 by Trekspert Plus. Executive producers are Mark A. Altman, DAREN DOCHTERMAN, Ashley Edward Miller, and Stephen Melching. The show is produced by Peter Holmstrom, Brian Mix. Original music by Joe Kramer. Original music by DAREN DOCHTERMAN in this case. Video editing by Brian Mix. You can open hailing frequencies with us by emailing us at TrekspertPlus@gmail.com, and you can find us on all major social channels at Inglorious Trek or 430 Movie Pod at Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to Deck 78 on the Inglorious Treksperts feed or at the 430 Movie subscription feed. So until 2 weeks from now, thanks for joining us on Deck 78. We can't wait to see you again. And until then, fire the rockets.
Deck 78 is an exclusive podcast from Treksperts Plus.